Hey guys, John here of YourAMCEntertainment.com, and today I am really excited to be joined by Rebecca Keegan. Rebecca is a contributing writer over at Time Magazine, and she's the author of the new book, The Futurist, The Life and Films of James Cameron. And with Avatar coming out on December 18th, we thought it would be a great idea to have her on here to talk about James Cameron, the book, and anything else she wants to talk about. Before I ask you anything else, you've been a writer for Time Magazine. You primarily have been a journalist. What got you interested in writing a book, and specifically, what got you into the process of writing a book about James Cameron?
Well, I visited the set for the first time in early 2008.
Now, when you say the set of Avatar, okay.
The set of Avatar, the movie that maybe we shouldn't even have to name at this point, right? We're all so geeked up about it. But I visited the Avatar set in early 2008, and it was like nothing I'd ever seen before in a movie set. I'd been on a lot of sets for stories for Time, and naturally I'd heard a lot about what the Titanic set was like and how grand it was. So I was shocked to go to this dingy little warehouse and see that here was just guys on computers, and they were making a whole movie with this weird little team. It looked like some sort of postmodern play or something. I mean, the first day I was there, no actors, no sets, no nothing.
And so what made you think, hey, I should write about a book about this?
Well, so there I am in this really weird, spare environment with this, I think, fascinating guy, James Cameron, and watching him work and looking in his camera lens and seeing the whole world that he had created, the world of Pandora. And there's Sigourney Weaver as a tall, blue, alien version of herself, and there's this Pandoran jungle, all in his camera lens while we're just sitting on this, bare warehouse floor. And I thought, this is wild. I want to see every step of how they're making this movie because it's so unique. And the more time I spent there, the more time I became really interested in Cameron as a guy, just because I can't think of another person in Hollywood who would have taken on this project. I mean, it seemed to me here was a guy who was only interested in doing things that were really hard. And I was curious about what makes someone like that.
Now, you didn't just write this book on your own. You actually had James Cameron helping you out with this book a little bit. What was his reaction when you told him about the project, and how did he respond to you with that?
Well, it took me about a year to talk him into cooperating with me. I called his producer, John Landau, his producer, John Landau, every 2 weeks, truly for about a year, and explained what I wanted to do. And I think initially Cameron was so busy just making his movie, he wasn't really thinking about it, and he was just, I think he kind of, put it to the back of his mind. And eventually, one day in late May of 2009, they invited me to the set again, and they sat me down and they said, okay, Rebecca, go ahead. What do you need from our cooperation here? And I gave Cameron a list of folks I wanted to talk to, people like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bill Paxton and people he'd worked with again and again. And he came back with a list that was twice as long and said, here are the folks you can talk to. And from that point on, he was really open and let me come to the set, anytime I wanted, answered tons of questions. And I just was relentless with them.
Okay, so let me ask you this, and I'm sure this must have come up in your discussions with him. Why did he decide, it's been a long time since Titanic. Why did he decide to make Avatar now?
Well, it's interesting. I think after Titanic, he thought he was going to take a couple of years off and make some of the documentaries and just do some things that he'd always wanted to do his whole life. He's really been into exploration. He did some projects with NASA. And I think that period lasted longer than he thought it would. He also had some projects that he worked on that didn't come together for a Comet script called Bright Angel Falling that he didn't end up making. He had a Mars movie that was a huge project he invested a lot of time in, and then there were 2 other Mars movies that came out, and they didn't do very well. And so the Mars movie went to the back burner. He was also working on this movie, Battle Angel, which a lot of people thought was really going to be his next movie. And I think it took him a while to figure out what's the right project for the technology that he wanted to develop. Really, he wanted to develop this virtual production pipeline and the 3D technology, and he wanted a movie that he felt like it would be big enough that it could justify the expense and the time of doing that.
When did he really start on this project of you know, what was the timeline between when he finally established in his head, okay, then the next project will be Avatar, to now? What is that timeline?
Well, let's see. I know, I think it was in 2005 that he taped this, I guess taped isn't the right word, but made this 5-minute prototype for Fox, showing them what the technology would look like. And at that time, Avatar and Battle Angel were still sort of neck and neck as to what he was going to make. And he found a scene from Avatar that was easier to use to demonstrate the technology. Right. And that was why they ended up going forward with Avatar first. So this little 5-minute prototype cost $10 million. And he showed Fox, and they loved it. But, okay, so we've already invested $10 million
That's an expensive
Avatar.
Sales pitch.
That's an expensive pitch. They already invested this money in Avatar. They were ready to go forward in Avatar. And the other thing is that there are more CG characters. Even more of the movie would be CG in Battle Angel. It would be even harder to make. So Avatar was sort of the middle step between what we were capable of, what he felt he was capable of, and Battle Angel.
So now one gets the feeling hearing about, we hear so much about the technology and how he's doing movies in a whole new way. One cannot help but get the impression that Avatar is not his end game. He sees this going somewhere. Where does he see himself going now post Avatar?
Well, one of the things that I had a lot of fun sitting in on was these meetings that he had with scientists and writers in which they were talking about the whole world of Pandora, and they were talking about sort of hammering out all these scientific concepts. And the reason is they're compiling this big, essentially, Wikipedia for Pandora that will be used for any sequels for Avatar.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a sequel for Avatar is something that's on the potential idea list.
It's definitely in the minds of the people working on this movie, and they've gone to great lengths. And some of what I sat in on was them talking about some theoretical kind of plots for such sequels. So clearly, his hope is that this is a movie that makes enough of an impression and does well enough that, it's able to become a franchise.
Now, if somebody reads your book, The Futurist Life and Films of James Cameron, what do you think is the one thing that will surprise people the most in reading your book?
One of the people I interviewed for the book was Guillermo del Toro, who told me about when he had first moved to the United States. He was broke. This was the early 90s. T2 had just come out. Cameron met him at a 4th of July party, and Guillermo del Toro ended up living in Cameron's guest house for long stretches of time. When Guillermo del Toro's father was kidnapped in Mexico, Cameron helped him find the right hostage negotiators. He helped put up the money for it. So he does all these things that are not really in keeping with this image of this, artistic dictator. That surprised me.
Wow. Okay, so where can people find your book?
You can find it on Amazon.com or on my website, JamesCameronBook.com, which has links to all the online stores, or in Barnes & Noble or anywhere else starting December 15th.